Welcome to Wiser Dialogue, conversations with women of color about issues, policies, and research that impact our lives. This month, we celebrate Father's Day with 3 guests. Salvador Contreras, who is an associate professor of economics at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Francis Culiato, who is the executive director at Visual Communications, and Greg Young, a business manager with PFHI Group. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
How are you?
So, probably no secret to anybody who knows me, but I was a daddy's girl. So this conversation is going to be really, really close to my heart. So one of the things that I like for us to start with is, in the media, we've been seeing families talk about having the race conversations with their sons, but we don't necessarily hear people talking about having the race conversations with their daughters. So Salvador, I'll start with you because I know that you live in McAllen, Texas, and that's a community that is 90% Hispanic. So do you think about having the race ethnicity conversation with your daughter?
So I do have these conversations with her because we see things in the news, right? So we saw, shootings of African Americans, for example, in the news, and she asked, well, why is this happening, right? And then, we have to have a conversation about, that sometimes color enters into the dialogue as a factor that may bring upon, negative consequences like being shot by a police officer, for example. So we try to have these conversations. Again, just recently we have these kids being caged up, Central American immigrants, and she asked about this, why are these kids being put in these cages? What do they do? What do they do wrong? So we have these conversations, but in her day-to-day interactions with her friends, she doesn't necessarily live these experiences. She doesn't feel like she's being put in the spot because of her race or ethnicity. But I think she is a lot more conscious about her place, her culture, because we do have these engagements dealing with broader national issues that we see in the news.
Okay, thank you. And how about you, Francis? And then I'll come to you, Greg, because I believe the two of you are more in areas that are a little more diverse. So is this a conversation that you think about having?
Well, I think right now just trying to expose my 5 to 6 year old to a lot of things growing up in Southern California for me. But I think this is something that we're going to have a conversation sooner than later, especially with upcoming elections and things that way. But at least when that happens, we sort of want to have some context and experience behind it. We've talked about, certain things like, it's kindergarten, they'll talk about, community folks like police officers and firefighters. And then, sometimes I'll make a comment, not all police officers are good people. Or just, but those are the things that, we'll sort of argue about. But I don't think she knows the nuance of all those things yet. But, I do work in media and a lot of things that we, film festivals or films that way, and really, really conscious about, quote unquote, how we weaponize media to break down communities and or build communities, right? So.
Yeah. So. A little different. Our daughter is 16, and so we definitely have these conversations, and we have these conversations because while we live in the Bay Area is very diverse. I mean, she goes to a all-girls Catholic high school, and the majority of folks don't look like her. She plays competitive soccer, and she is the only young lady on the team that looks like her. So it's just having conversations around awareness. It's having conversations of changes in dynamics. And if there are points where you may feel isolated, kind of what that means, and more importantly, how to deal with that. And then we try to balance that by engaging in our community through, through community events. So for us, it's a balance with her around how do you navigate between two worlds. That really is what it's about. We have to be chameleons. We have to understand our cultural dynamics, but other cultures and their dynamics as it relates to her.
Okay, so thank you. I like that. I like that we have young ladies who are in very different phases of their lives. One who is very young, and so race is there, but not really. A 9.5-year-old who's looking at the media and beginning to question, and then a 16-year-old who's in a space where race, she's very clear about race, but now it's about beginning to understand what are the consequences, if I put that in quotation marks, of her race. So I'm talking to you about your daughters, but do you have multiple children? Who has multiple children?
I've got 3, 18, 16, and 10. Boy, girl, boy.
Okay. Since you said you have 3 children, boy, girl, boy, do you rear them differently? Do you think about, dare I say, some of the stereotypes? Does the girl do the housework, the guys your young men do the yard work, or do you sort of, are you rearing them the same?
Is that for me?
Yes.
With the multiple, or you want to start with the only children?
Multiple.
Yeah, well, just in general, I would like all of them to clean up more. So that's a general statement. None of them seem to do enough of that. But yeah, I mean, something very, very simple as our son, he's 18, he was 17. If he wanted to hop in Uber, that's no problem. We have not done that with our daughter. Just out of just the craziness that you hear. And so would she be the same if we Ubered her around? Probably, but that's just a comfort level that we don't have, just given the dynamics. I would say that she has more of an awareness of different environments that she's in than our 18-year-old. But something as simple as Uber, we don't feel comfortable just Ubering her around versus the 18-year-old. We're raising all of our children to be independent, to be self-sufficient. So I think from that standpoint, it's fairly consistent. I don't want our daughter to have to depend on anyone, nor do I want our sons to have to depend on anyone. So I think from that standpoint, we're pretty consistent. She is a lot cleaner than her older brother. So if you're saying in terms of her room looks way better than his room. So, I don't know how much of that we taught or we said you have to do, as much as she's just intrinsically neater.
I want to come back to something that you said. You've indicated that you're rearing all of your children to be independent. So Salvador and Francis, how much of that is like on your mind in terms of rearing a daughter who is independent and not dependent on someone?
Yeah, I think I have the same experience as Greg. It's hard to say that counterfactual. I don't have multiple kids, so I don't know if if I would have reared my little girl different if there was more kids or a son. But everything that we do is with the intention of making sure that they can think for themselves and take actions for themselves to eventually become independent of us. But just like Greg, it's like whenever my little girl asks me, I want to go to my friend's house or I want to go have a sleepover, I'm like, wait, wait a minute. And maybe if it was a boy, maybe I would think differently. I mean, I don't know, but but definitely there's a little bit more guarding, more fatherly guarding, I think, when it comes to these types of issues. But maybe this is in some sense taken away from that independence by not letting them go out there and doing things on their own, right? So somehow I try to keep her as protected as possible to be there, and this there's obviously some sort of my counteract what I'm trying to achieve, but I feel that in the long run it can only lead to her being more independent. As she gets older, I might give her more freedoms in that sense, but freedoms that I'm not comfortable, as Greg said, to explore at this moment.
Right.
I would say I think sort of just echo a lot of us trying to get our daughters to that independent space, when they're older. But I would agree. I think I'm a helicopter dad, in terms of want to watch over her, make sure she's safe, and even the schools that she's in, and we sort of strategize sort of where the placement is, and there's sort of a boundary there because we also don't want to sort of put her in these traditional gender roles, right? Because I would know for sure. I think if I had a son, I would choose different. And whether it's because my daughter's just the princess of our worlds, right? So I think it's there, and just to allude to what Greg said, we're sort of just trying to prepare them for this world, not just to be independent but strong, to be able to code switch through different scenarios, different people, and I think that's really where all of us as fathers sort of we're preparing for that day, but we don't want that day to come yet.
Right.
Francis, you made the comment about gender roles. So I know in our conversation, your daughter is a boxer. In addition to taking dance and tennis, so boxing was intentional in terms of exposure, or to balance those gender roles, or for protection, I should say.
Yeah, I'm not sure to balance gender roles as much, but I did sort of want to show her, her mom was a collegiate tennis player, and so tennis is sort of the central thing. And then, also thinking about boxing, sort of just very quote unquote masculine sport, right? But then like today, we start from boxing, we go to piano, then we'll end up to ballet, because this is the whole day. So it's really given that spectrum. But what I'm really more concerned about outside those gender roles is actually the racial and privilege roles of each of those sports, right? Yeah. Coming from boxing, then coming from ballet, who's there, even though we're here in Long Beach, so LA, a lot of it is very people of color, but then you can sort of see when you navigate those places who are the privileged folks, right? And then so I sort of a lot of intersection there. I'm still sort of even thinking about myself and how we're sort of I'm kind of pushing her and pulling through these spaces. But yeah, again, I think to sort of break that stereotype of you kick like a girl, you throw like a girl, you punch like a girl, but you just sort of want to give her just these tools as she gets older.
Okay. And so, Greg, you indicated that your daughter plays soccer. Salvador, does your daughter participate in any sports?
We tried pushing our little girl to do soccer or volleyball or any other type of sports, and she's just not into it. Her most competitive sport is chess, right? She competes in chess. She's probably amazing. But there's no physicality in this, right? And maybe, but this is just I guess a dad thinking like, hey, you also need just a stereotype, right, to toughen up, and maybe this will bring it to you. But she just has never wanted it, and I guess we haven't pushed to the point where we say like, you're going to do this. But we push her enough that she's doing all these other activities.
Right. One might argue that mental toughness that chess builds might be a better tool than the physical, right, strength. Having that strategy to know how to plan, how to navigate, how to just strategically get some of the things that you want in life might be more important than the physical aspect. So
I was going to say, I think it also kind of speaks to, it sounds like, I mean, our daughter, we kind of did ballet and all. So I think we all kind of, even with our sons, we start out in these traditional roles of what we think or want them to do, but it ultimately, they're going to figure it out. And all we can do is dads is, you wanna support that.
2 more questions for you. The first one being, as a dad, what's the biggest concern for you with respect to, I would say, being a dad? Maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's not a fear, but what's your biggest concern?
So for my part, my biggest concern is that I might be doing too much. Like, I have these expectations. For example, on chess, like, I want her to practice every day, to go online and do a rated game again, the idea is to practice. But then I feel like at times she go like, like I need some time, I need my own space. I need some time to do my own thing. And so I think that negotiating my expectations for her and her, and her ability to cope with all the things that we're demanding of her. I think that's my biggest concern.
I think for same concerns, finding that balance, especially, I think we're all in our professional spaces, kind of through our family and personal spaces. My other biggest concern, as she gets older, there'll be that days like, Dad, I don't want to really hang out with you anymore, and I want to hang out with friends, and how do I sort of prepare for that?
Yeah, I think for me, one, as parents, you get no book, you get no manual. And so my concern is, as a father,
what is a stereotype or myth that is out there that you wish people would stop perpetuating it? And we'll go in reverse order. I'll start with you this time, Greg. So give me a myth that you wish folks would stop perpetuating.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, just specifically with men of color, that we are just as engaged with our children as any other group. I mean, listening here, we're going to ballet, we're going to boxing, we're going to tennis, we're going to soccer. So men of color are engaged with their kids. We don't have multiple kids all across the globe and the country. We are here. We are engaged with our kids. We do homework. We take them to soccer. We take them to school. We come home. We cook for them. We do all of that, just like everybody else.
I echo that sentiment as well. And I think other stereotypes, if we're sort of wearing my Asian American hat of being a model minority, I think about that too, and in terms of her doing all these things and excelling, but also to expose her, like, I think one of the things that really just break the stereotype too for her right now, I think she might be thinking that all the other kids are doing this. She had privilege, and so I sort of want to break her own stereotypes as much that she's sort of taking from other folks. I think that's sort of the next a few thoughts that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I think some of the stereotypes are that fathers are not as engaged as, say, moms are, and they're developing their kids. But I try to attend most of the events that my little girl's in. Help her with homework. I'm editing videos whenever she's doing her science project. So I think the stereotype that dads are not all that hands-on is.
Well, I want to thank you all. I'd like to thank my guests, Salvador Contreras, Francis Caliado, and Greg Young. You have been watching Wiser Dialogue, The Missing Viewpoint.